I'm here to introduce our next speaker, Shelley Mountjoy, who is the founder and president of the Secular Student Alliance at George Mason University, where she's a graduate student. Shelley is a board member of the Secular Student Alliance and a leader in several local groups in the Washington, D.C. metro area. She has organized over 200 educational, activist, community service, and social events for a variety of groups. She lives in Central Virginia with her dog Junior and her cat Sarah.
Hi everyone. We're going to be doing some writing, just really short stuff, but if you have a pen and you want to grab that out, that'd be great. This is actually something that I normally talk to undergrads about, undergrads that are not necessarily related to a secular student group, but I think it's even more important to talk about this in our setting because, like the previous speaker was talking about, our image problem. And that really comes into play here. What my talk is about today is the image that we are presenting to other people on campus. We could call this a few things: being under the magnifying glass, being in a fishbowl, being in the spotlight. There's a bunch of different terms that we could use to call what is basically happening when you're a student leader. Oops. Got it. Okay. So essentially, everybody in the student group is representing the group, but specifically talking about the student leaders here, president, VP, whatever other positions there are, you're not only representing your group, but you're also representing your school. For instance, you're usually on campus no longer known as your individual person, but people are talking to you as the president of XYZ group. And administrators specifically are not thinking about you as much as a student, but as a student leader. And the they are watching you idea, the idea is, who is this they? The they encompasses more than just the people in your group, but administrators, people in other groups, and specifically talking about the non-theist side. Some people are watching you just because they don't agree with you, or perhaps they see you as a representative of non-theism, even if that's not what you see yourself as. So that's always something to keep in mind for everyone, but particularly in this category. So previously I called it life in a fishbowl. There's a few reasons why I want to use that term, and I think that it really describes what's going on here. So the first one, we have the little scared guys. So you're in this fishbowl regardless. It doesn't matter how you feel about being in the fishbowl. The only way to not be in a fishbowl would be not to be a student leader. We certainly don't want that to happen. The second one, everybody's looking at you, even people that are bigger than you, scarier than you, administrators, other leaders looking at you. This third one is really important, this distortion. The little fish is over here, and it doesn't really look anything like a fish. Part of being in a fishbowl is that people are seeing a distorted view of you. When you look in a fishbowl, that fish, looks a little bit bigger if it's in the center, looks a little bit twisted if you're looking from the top. Because of that curved situation, the fish is constantly looking different. This comes into play a lot when you're on campus and people see something and they might interpret it the incorrect way. For instance, you know how sometimes you're walking by and you hear a little snippet of a conversation and all of a sudden you're like, what are they talking, And it might be a completely innocent conversation. Perhaps somebody heard the wrong segment of that conversation. But just being aware of those types of things, little things can be taken the wrong way. I mean, throwing a piece of trash on the ground could be taken, one way if you're a student, but another way if you're trying to run a group, and then they want to take those behaviors and think about them in terms of the members of the group, not as you as an individual. So in the fishbowl, there's three ways that people commonly act: the thriving, fighting, and opportunity. Thriving are people that really embrace being in the fishbowl. They actually do better being in the public eye than they would independently, and kind of get a charge off of that public spotlight. Fighting are people that want to be left alone. They'd rather not be in the spotlight. They're like, everybody just go away. I want to go back to my room. Kind of like an introversion if they previously were extroverted. Opportunity, these are people that see the benefits of being in the spotlight. Oh, look, now I can go into a meeting and whatever administrator is going to listen to me. Now I can speak to the funding board and I have some authority to speak to them. These are people that see, and there are also some negative aspects of people that are using their leadership in negative ways and getting things out of their leadership that aren't exactly ethical. But regardless, the opportunity people are people that see that opportunity that's provided by their leadership and grasp onto those. The other thing about the novelty wearing off is whatever category you fit in would not necessarily be the category that you would be in throughout your tenure as a student leader. You know, you might be somebody that, you know, initially you're very excited about it, then it gets to be too much, falling into the fighting category. Then after some time you start to see the opportunities. I think it's just really important to know that there's different kind of reactions, to know what they are. So the next thing that we're going to do is, I think, in order to really understand the image that you're presenting, I think it's important to understand the values that you want to convey. And I'd encourage people to pick the most important values. I'd like to limit it to 3. There's space on your handout to write down the 3 if you want to. There's only 20 values up here. I could have listed 100 values and they would have been, you know, 8-point font. And, you can Google like personal values and look up values. But I would definitely, like, even before you really start to think about the image you want to convey, you need to think about the person that you are. And then you can think about how that relates to what you want to convey. But I would definitely choose not more than 3. You know, you might start out with a list of 6 and then say, well, if I could only choose 5, what would I cross off? What would I cross off? And get down to these core values. For instance, if I had this list in front of me, mine would be integrity, leadership, and efficiency. And if we have some time at the end, y'all can share what you think your 3 would be, if they're on the list or not on the list. So what I want to do, I mentioned bring out the paper, is I want to talk a little bit about the online image that you're creating. This is a picture from somebody's Facebook photo album. This is a picture of one of my friends, actually, but through all these pictures, we've blocked out the faces. But what I want to do is I'm going to flip through 6 pictures, and I'd like you guys to think about captions that you would write. We're not going to talk about them right now, but if you want to jot down a caption, you don't have to do one for every one. But these are just pictures that you see. Think about these. You're seeing these as student leader, of other student leaders on any sort of online. And here's the second one. And if you can't see, that's actually an ice luge drinking. And I'll go to, we're going to go back to all these, but this is just to get the captions through your mind, anything that quickly comes to mind. These 2 are things, think about them specifically in terms of being on campus in a residential situation. And then the last set I'm going to show you are people's profile pictures, like the main picture that they're associating with their name. Okay, so we're going to go back. Does anybody have a caption that they want to share?
Barbering and chasing.
Yeah, I mean, this does look like this one person is consuming both of these drinks. Maybe that's the situation, maybe that's not the situation. Hopefully...
It's responsible students carries drinks for person limping and with crutches in the background. You just can't see that.
Exactly. You don't know what's going on here. There's some pictures where I've seen where, you know, somebody's lined up behind, you know, 20, 30 alcohol bottles and they don't say that, hey, I work in a bar. You know, so that's one thing that we go through all of these is if this is an innocent picture, that caption is really going to change the way that people see that. The other thing that I want to talk about is it's not just about what you're posting, it's also about what your friends are posting. So some of these other pictures, which is actually what the next picture is not something that somebody posted of themselves, but somebody's friend posted. Did anybody have a caption for this one?
Pretty cool.
This poor boy, and I did block out his face, but he has taken a drink out of the ice luge and is vomiting over the side.
Oh.
And in this situation, I guess the main thing I would recommend is this is, you know, you need to watch what people are tagging you in. And if you're not in the unfortunate circumstance where your friend insists on posting something like this, you know, the only thing you really can do is make sure that you untagged yourself. But there's nothing else other than talking to someone about it, but the person that posted it. Okay, so the around campus ones. Yeah?
For those of us of a different generation, what is an ice luge?
It's a piece. There's a engraving here, like a little wedge in the ice, and somebody pours alcohol from the top here, and the person sits down here and drinks it. So they're drinking the cool alcohol that has slid down this ramp.
Does it slide into their mouth, or does it slide into
Slide into their mouth.
Into their
Yes.
mouth. Okay.
Right. And there's actually sometimes multiple different
You guys
ways.
are not big on cups.
It's a great solution.
And this person not only has a cup, they also have the ice luge. But yeah. Any ideas for this one?
Changing a light bulb?
Accident waiting to happen.
Yeah, no, the light bulb one, I mean, if that's the case, that's great. But one of the main things to be careful about, and people think the previous ones with the alcohol, obviously illegal activity, or even drinking when you are 21, but drinking in a, not the best picture that you want to pose of yourself is kind of obvious. One of the main less obvious things are things that might be against your residential life contract, or things that you don't want to be seen doing specifically on campus. So standing on the toilet and the counter, specifically on campus, is an issue there. See the next one. This is at a game, and you see this person has taken the shortcut to drinking out of the keg at a sporting event. Anybody have any other thoughts about? Okay, so as profile pictures, what do you guys think? Thoughts on
Maybe she likes Chick-fil-A.
that? Yeah, there's also alcohol right here, and that's a laptop case on her head.
Were you taking this photo?
No, I mean, it's hard not to laugh at these. It's hard, really difficult not to laugh. But if the wrong person's looking at these, they aren't laughing. And that's a big issue. A lot of people think, oh, I'll use privacy settings. Well, there's one big issue to that, which is, so what if this is open to all your friends, and your friend just happens to be at their job, which is working in the student activities office, surfing through Facebook, and an administrator is walking by, and all of a sudden, you're up there with a laptop case on your head and a glass of alcohol sitting next to you. They're not going to be laughing. It's taken a situation that's no longer funny anymore. And this one is also, it's pretty obvious that this is not appropriate for a profile picture. Okay, so that's pretty much it for all the pictures. Now I was just going to talk about some of the things we've seen. The first thing is, there are ways to survive the fishbowl. It's not like you're jumped into this fishbowl and all of a sudden everything's a disaster all the time. There's certain things that you can do to prevent this. The first one is thinking about your actions, but not just your actions, also how those actions can be interpreted. Even photographs where you're with a bunch of friends that are doing a bunch of crazy things and you're not doing it, can look bad. What were you doing at that party where everybody's passing a bong around or whatever? So thinking not only about what it is that you particularly did, but how those could look or be interpreted, especially if somebody didn't have the full story. And another point to that is this doesn't mean that you can't have a good time. This doesn't mean that we're never going to open a bottle of beer, that you're never going to go out with your friends, that you're never going to put something on your head, So it doesn't mean that. What it means is that there's a time and a place for those things. Those are pictures that I know a lot of people just use digital pictures now, but these are the kind of pictures that you print out and put under your bed. Or, they're pictures for you, they're not pictures for the world. So realizing that you can have a good time, but that might not be the impression that you want to convey. The next thing is monitoring your stress level, like keeping that in mind. Sometimes people feel like they have to be this perfect person all the time, and that gets stressful. And usually that ends up backfiring in a situation that you have somebody where all year they feel like, oh, I can't do this, I've got to dress up, I've got to watch every single thing I do, and then spring break comes and boom. So and then they have, nude pictures of themselves all over, not only Facebook, but anything else. So keeping your stress level in check is really important to preventing that. The other thing is realizing that you can't be prepared for everything. regardless of what you do, regardless of what pictures you've kept from being online or etc., you can't prepare for what other people can do. I didn't have a quote of this, but I've seen this pretty often, although usually I tell people that they should delete it or they delete it on their own. But something like, you write a status update like, I had a really good time last night. And all of your friends start writing comments that are really inappropriate about the evening or whatever. And you need to watch that. I've seen people talk about, and this was a really old quote and it's kind of too long for a presentation, but somebody writing a comment about their evening and someone else writing about STDs. You know, and that's not, so just making sure that even if you don't have time to keep up what everybody's writing, either cutting off the comments or watching and just making sure that you delete those things that are inappropriate. And I definitely would not shy away from talking to a person that's doing this and explaining to them, this is not the image you want to convey, regardless of, you know, whether or not you are friends, you know, that this is something that anybody could see and you don't want to convey that image about yourself. And the last thing is just to think about the positive. There are a lot of ways that you can positively convey yourself by putting up the right pictures, by thinking about the opportunities that you have being a student leader. So there's a huge area here for positive repercussions from this. And finally, the last thing I wanted to mention was the fishbowl effect, which is a phenomenon that occurs when somebody is no longer in the fishbowl, particularly for people that were effective under the spotlight. When that goes away, to not have the drive to continue to be effective leaders. So that's something too to think about, especially as your term as a student leader ends. You know, and all of this relies on, if you know what your values are and you think about those values, how you want to display those values through your pictures. I mean, if we go back and look through those 6 pictures and look at that list of values, there's only, I mean, courage, I think, is the only value that could have been represented in any of those pictures. And that's something to think. I mean, I like to encourage people to have their few values up and look through what you're doing. Does this represent integrity? Does this represent leadership or authenticity? You know, and if you don't see that, then maybe you don't have up there what you want to convey about yourself. So I guess we're almost done, but if anybody wanted to share their thoughts or what they felt their values are, I know a lot of people feel a little bit more attached to them, their values, when they're able to vocalize them. Yeah?
I didn't really have a chance to get more than one of them, but one of the ones that really stuck out to me was accomplishment.
We can go back.
Yeah, that might be helpful.
Yeah, I feel like accomplishment is definitely something that, like, not only as a student, or as hopefully future student leader, but also just like as a person, I think that is something that I strive for a lot.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. Yeah.
I didn't really have an issue with picking 6. I could really only pick one. It was perseverance, because that's what kind of allows me to make it through and make it beyond other people in my classes and such. So that's what all you need in order to get on.
John, did you?
He stole mine, so that's perfect. I'm not going to persevere.
Yeah, and again, you guys can Google like personal values. I mean, there's hundreds of terms that might help you identify what you display in your life, or being able to put terms and concrete thoughts to how you feel you're living your life now. But it's certainly something to reflect on, and it's something to reflect on continuously, like not just today, but maybe a year from now, some of your values might have shifted a little bit. It's something definitely to be aware of. Yeah, Liz?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that this is fabulous for student leaders, but also very valuable for anyone who thinks they might want to go looking for a job someday, or people who might have a job or be involved in other organizations, and that these images and this fishbowl effect is not just as you as a student leader, but it carries broadly over into life.
Yeah, ironically, if you Google life in a fishbowl, one of the few things, first things that comes up are pastors talking about how they feel like they live a life in a fishbowl. Irony? Yeah.
A secular organization with which I participate was looking for a new executive director. And one of the applicants had a Facebook page, and we went to her Facebook page, and it noted she was a Scientologist. I'm not sure that legally we could have made a judgment about that because employment may be different in subject to civil rights laws, which I think is good. But Liz made me think of it when she talked about future employers or your future children. And there's this dichotomy and maybe even a lack of integrity in putting yourself out, whether or not you're a student leader or just a human being. Am I being disingenuous about who I really am by censoring what goes on the World Wide Web about me? But as a pragmatic matter, if you want to do what this gentleman thinks he wants to do, and that's accomplish something, there's a piece of that. I have 2 automobiles, one of which has a plate that says ACLU, and the other just has a non-identified plate. I drive much more respectfully and carefully if I'm wearing the ACLU label because I don't want to denigrate the ACLU than I'm wearing than on the other car. I repeat, there's some disingenuousness in that. But that number 4 accomplishment is a handy thing to have happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the point that you brought up about remembering that things will be interpreted differently by different audiences is key. Last night I was just having a conversation with my friend about this because my Twitter account is linked to my blog, and I was like, man, I need to stop tweeting about whiskey because everyone who reads my blog is like, this guy's an alcoholic. He's tweeting about whiskey all the time. And so people who don't have a relationship with you and are just interfacing with you over things like Facebook or Twitter aren't going to get the full picture, and it's important to remember that.
I think all this is important, but I also think that there's a flip side of it that's important, which is that almost all a working definition of recognition or fame, or being in any way a public figure, is that to some extent you can't control what other people think of you, and it's all, I would say it's almost a working definition that it's like if you're just a private person, anybody who has an opinion about you, you can probably talk with them and fix it. And to some extent, being a public figure means people are going to interpret, are going to have an opinion about you no matter what. And I think that you can certainly shape your public image, to the degree that you can. But I also think we all need to recognize that there's a degree at which we just need to let it go, and accept people are going to have an opinion about us that we're not, then we can't correct it.
I guess the 2 aspects I see as important are, one, understand what you can control, and
Yes.
I just forgot the second one. Darn it was good too. It's gonna be so good.
Well, it's like making
It'll come back to me.
Yeah, it's like making sure that you're untagged. The picture's already up there. You've tried talking to the person. They don't want to take the picture down. They thought it was a great night. Maybe they're in the picture too. That's the best thing you can do, is just untag yourself so it's no longer showing up with your name.
So what I did early on with Facebook, probably my 2nd month on Facebook, was I turned off that setting where people can link to any photo tagged with me from my profile. Because I'm an SAT tutor part-time, and I have these 16 and 17-year-old kids and their parents and whatnot, and I didn't want them to decide whether or not they should use me as a tutor because I'm sitting there with a karaoke microphone in one hand and a beer in the other. There are actually a lot of those pictures on the internet. I probably karaoke a lot with beer. But I figured if I thought it was important to, the other thing I wanted to say about goals. So understanding the amount of control you have and understanding what your goals are. One of my 3 that I picked was honesty. I think if I don't have many secrets, I don't have many things to hide. I'm always kind of on the street level. I, though, understand that if one of my goals is to be able to get new SAT students, then I probably can't have lots of pictures of me drinking beer on Facebook. And so I have to balance honesty with what he was saying, maybe
there is a level of disingenuousness there. I have the word atheist in my Facebook profile. And screw you if you don't like kids. Don't use me as a tutor. But as for beer drinking or not, those are little things that I think aren't entirely important to my self-identity, where it might influence my income and ability to get jobs.
Right. Thank you very much, Shelley. Yeah.